with a company based in South Africa, friends of Alana's, called Pulse. So crazily enough, I set mine for 8 a.m. Monday mornings. And it was funny because, of course, I was like grumbling about it when I was like, I'm overdoing virtual like workouts. The pandemic is done.
It's over. Yeah. It was so yesterday.
And then, we wanted to support this company because they're friends with Alana. And now I absolutely love it. And I'm reaping the benefits of it.
Amazing. Well, okay. So this is one of those like surreal moments where you just so casually mention Alana. For me, Alana Kloss is royalty. And you're just so casually, oh yeah, we're just hanging out. Oh my gosh, what's that like?
I'm so lucky. No, it's true. I mean, I'm laughing because these individuals, they're from South Africa, where she's from. She's like a tournament named after her. And she was number one in the world in doubles. So she is an incredible athlete. She's part of the ownership group of Los Angeles Dodgers, Sparks, the reason the PWHL is standing today. And she's also the person that's making me rehab my knee for better or worse. I'm extremely
not too busy to help take care of the people that matter to her. And that's what I love about her.
Even when they don't know they need it themselves. Listen, I think that all the time, the two icons that I get to be around. And I try not to lose perspective on how lucky I am and how amazing it is. So,
so we could go back to our backstory, meeting classic rooftop party in New York City on a warm summer's night.
Warm summer night, all thanks to Maggie Palmer, who is just incredible and is like the ultimate connector. We had lunch that day, and it was a belated birthday lunch for her. And then we were supposed to co-work together. I'm not too sure how much of the co-working got done. And then she's like, what are you doing tonight? And I actually had to go. I was going to a book party. She was like, me too. She's like, come to mine first. It's earlier than yours. So I went to 2 back-to-back book parties for somebody that, anyone that knows me is listening to this, you don't even really read that many books, but I like to go to their parties.
Yeah, book parties are great.
Well, it certainly was great because I got to meet you. I got to hear about Lupin Tai, got to bask in an evening of gratitude, which is something, and, activated in a really different and unique way. So I loved it. And
it was amazing.
Party I went to about foreign agents had a lot to live up to coming from
every book party from here on out. You better step it up. Step it up.
That's true.
It's one of those things when you go to parties like that where for this, I mean, you saw I walked right in and we just started chatting, and that's kind of my MO at a party, is I just walk in and the first person I chat with is just great, this amazing conversation. This is why I came here. But every moment leading up to it, I'm like, should I go to this thing? I don't know. So thank you for such an exceptional moment at that party. And then I got to chat with you about your experience very briefly, getting to work at Billie Jean King Enterprises, found out you were a managing director. But of all the time that we've known each other, I actually don't know what managing director is and does for BJK Enterprises. So tell me all the things that you do. I know a lot of it, but I don't know all of it.
Organizational titles, so coveted, but what do they actually mean? This could be a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
So I'm so fortunate. I worked for a consulting firm for many years. And in 2013, actually, I met Billie Jean King and Alana Kloss. They came to the firm, which was called Teneo, for the reason that they were going to sell World Team Tennis, which was a league, co-ed tennis league that they had built and ran for many, many years. And they were just thinking about the next iteration of their life. And I always tell this story because it's so endearing and so indicative of who Billie Jean King is. But when we met her at that point, she had just been heads down in tennis, built, trying to bring men and women together, continue the work on advocacy and equal pay, continue to support the Women's Tennis Association, which she founded, and the Women's Sports Foundation, which she founded. And she had never put her name on anything. She didn't own the web domain BillieJeanKing.com. So the first thing we were like was, okay, tennis is amazing and you have done so much in tennis. Guess what? You've also done so much for the world. You are literally one of these people that has changed the course of history. So we think that everyone should know about that. And when they Google you, more than, the homepage of whatever tennis effort you're leading at the time.
Or Wikipedia, right?
Right. So it was kind of step one. And a lot of the work that we did at Teneo was around executive positioning. So she's actually an amazing case study over the course of 10 years on that. And then we talked to her about her her passion, which is equity and inclusion and like just knocking down barriers for others. That is transpired in sports, but it's also like, she was really interested in the corporate landscape and, the power that existed in the corporate landscape and how a CEO can make a decision that changes the course of people's lives overnight. You look at, we talked at the time about, she was talking to people at Salesforce about their plight to Mark Benioff, Leila Seika and Cindy Robbins, about how you can have equal pay at the company and how they had discovered it. And she said, I really want to focus on that. So we said, great, we got a lot of clients. Let's think about what you want to do. And let's again, go back to putting your name on something. So we founded the Billie Jean King Leadership Initiative, which was literally a philanthropic endeavor so that she could bring together, those in her remit and ilk that would love to sit in the room with Billie Jean and say, hey, what are you doing for the LGBTQ community in your organization? Like, what are you doing to make sure that your board has more diversity, that there's women of color, in top tiers of leadership? By the way, are you paying everyone equally? Take a look at that. Here's an example of a company that did it, and just totally kind of going out the side of the original scope of where she was, but actually she'd always worked alongside business leaders to drive change. So we founded that in 2014, had multiple symposiums, did research partnerships. And then in 2018, I decided that I was kind of, thinking about what was next for me, and actually went and did some traveling and stayed in touch with Billie Jean and Alana, because I got to work for them as, they were my client for, for 4 years now at this point. And they started saying, we've had a kind of a holding company where we've done Billie's deals and licensing for many years called Billie Jean King Enterprises. We really want to do more there and potentially advise companies on their equity and inclusion journey, try and get more companies into women's sports. And they have as you might have seen and got to know them, they have a laundry list of things they want to do always. And they're all grounded in changing the world for the better. I got to join them, and there's a small team of us. Marjorie Gampman, who you also met in Spain in Malaga, had kind of started formalizing some of those efforts. And we really kind of focused companies in 3 areas that were really, really important to Billie Jean and Alana. And that is, investments, money. Billie always says, follow the money, know where money comes from. When she's talking to athletes, she's understand how you make money, where the money goes, who's taking percentages of the money, because as you grow, you lose sight of that and always know the significance of every dollar. So investments has materialized in Trailblazer Venture Studio, which has, equity stakes in a lot of startups. League One Volleyball is an example of that just started their league this year. The GIST, Just Women's Sports, basically anything in the women's sports ecosystem. It also kind of comes in the form of helping efforts like the Professional Women's Hockey League garner investment, stand up on their own as a sustainable independent league. So it's investment, it's marketing and representation. That's ensuring that all of the marketing partnerships that we do are grounded in purpose, are with the right type of entities that we want to be working with. I mean, Billie Jean King has a pretty taintless brand, right? So, it would be hard, you'd be hard pressed to do anything to mess that up, but still being very intentional about the organizations. And again, it's the full circle of what is the company doing, to help others and what she cares about. And also representing some other athletes, Kendall Coyne Schofield, who is one of the, founding members of the Professional Women's Hockey League, an example of that. So, that's great. And then, the sports ecosystem. So the Billie Jean King Cup has come under that, which was renamed in 2020. The Women's World Cup of Tennis. Tennis will always be in the DNA of a lot of things that we do. It was the first, it was what gave Billie Jean and Alana the platform to change the world. So we'll always go back there to our kind of roots. But those are the 3 areas that I work across. And then also the Leadership Initiative, which we founded years ago, we rebranded it just last year to the Billie Jean King Foundation, because everyone was calling it an institute. We still will always do leadership under that, but just simplifying it so people know, this is Billie Jean's individual foundation. She also founded the Women's Sports Foundation, but she wanted to have more kind of autonomy to do additional funding for, cases that she cares about. So a lot of, reproductive freedom funding efforts comes via the foundation. Working with the National Women's Law Centre, Athlete Ally, Ending Homophobia in Sports is one of the great organizations that we give to. And then we're really, really focused on the next generation of leaders coming. So we have a partnership with ESPN called the Billie Jean King Youth Leadership Award. And these are all the kind of fun things that we get to do at Billie Jean King Enterprises, thinking about Billie Jean's legacy, that Youth Leadership Award that takes place at the ESPYs every year. Guess what? The ESPYs didn't have an award named after a woman until, our team contacts them and says, hey, there's somebody significant in the sports world that's changed a lot. There's actually lots of women, but here's the one that we work for, and we think that you should have an award named after her, and like use it as an inspiration for the next generation coming. So yeah, I get to work on all of those great things. And
well, then when do you sleep? That's a lot. That is so much. And it's not just the tactics of the things that you're doing. It's the impact that is so vast and so great, everything you do. So first off, thank you. Thank you for being the beacon of hope, the beacon of change, to show that there are ways that are supplemental to how we've always done things the same way, and giving folks the path, being that bulldozer to get out ahead of folks so that you can start paving the way for just better and more equitable experiences for everybody around the world, not just in sports, but everywhere.
Thank you. I mean, MK, you saw this yourself. I mean, this is all we do is, like we're executing what Billie Jean wants. Like she has the vision, the foresight, like the things that she sees. She kind of sees the air bubble, right? So everyone else is just looking at the smooth screen and she's like, oh no, actually, here's where we need to change things. And here's where I think there's more scope to improve things for everyone.
Which I think is like the beauty of being a change agent, right? Is that you're always at the macro, but you are so trusting and so empowered by the folks who are helping you run the actual vision against, reality, right? There, you can have a vision, but a vision with nobody to execute is just a dream. It really means nothing. And one of the things that was so present for me when we were in Malaga, and thank you again for the invitation. For those that don't know, the Billie Jean King Cup took place in Malaga, right? This was the last year that it's going to take place in Malaga. And right before the finals, you hosted some of the most badass, is my podcast so I can swear, badass people ever to have walked this earth. And not just folks who are, women in professional sports or women, you have had some of the most influential people in that space, and you gathered them to band together as a community to talk about the impact that investing in women's sports has, not just on the specific athletes themselves, but on the totality of society. And I just sat gobsmacked in the room, recognizing this amazing opportunity you've created for folks to join a community, not just passively, but actively. It was incredible.
Thank you. And thank you for being there. And thank you for, the generosity of Loop and Tie to give everyone a gift at the end of that. And of course, again, leading with intentionality, that it was supporting women founded businesses, which is just so integral to everything that we believe in. That event in particular, again, that's a Billie Jean King and Alana Kloss special. They're saying, okay, we're finally at this moment that we've dreamed about. There is a rising tide at the moment. There is huge momentum, but we've lived it. We have, Billie Jean always says, the more you know about history, the more you know about yourself. And, how do we help those that want to show up purposefully in this moment actually ensure that they're doing so in a sustainable and equitable fashion? And when there's a momentum and excitement around things, you see a lot more brands that you wouldn't have typically thought of previously. And, they're the kind of people that ask the questions, well, how much are you spending in men's sports? Because I really want to know the delta and what that delta is, because we're talking a lot about what you're doing in women's sports today, but is that all of your capacity? Do you have more? And can we level the playing field in different ways? So, it was an incredible platform to have the Power of Women's Sports Summit at the Billie Jean King Cup finals, that pays men and women equally, that is the best players around the world in women's tennis, the first sport to, provide equal pay. So we're looking forward to continuing iterations of that, and just seeing the progress that people are making and welcoming in more people that want to be intentional about showing up for women's sports. So there's a direct correlation between women in leadership and women's sports. It's long researched fact that, 93% of professional women in leadership identify as having played sports.
Guilty.
Guilty in the best way.
Yeah, in all the best ways. Well, what I think is so interesting about this moment that we're in right now, and every moment is just a snapshot in time, but someone literally just said in a meeting we had today that women's sports is having a moment. And I was like, women's sports have been having a moment for a really long time, but it just feels like the rest of the guests are now joining the party, right? As we're watching the PWHL blow up on social media right now. We just heard the announcement of the women's professional rugby teams that are also popping up all around. Women's soccer teams are popping up. Boston, just my backyard. We're getting up our women's pro team. And it does feel like there's a lot more visibility, but the communities always exist. Like, what do you think, now that you've been immersed in it for so long, is really fundamentally shifting at the tectonic plate level here?
Well, I have to attribute a little bit of it to women that got significant wealth that like set the table. So like Michelle Kang in the NWSL, she said, hey, Washington Spirit is worth this amount of money. And everything from there follows, right? Other people are like, oh, okay, these investment teams. So, you have to talk about like trailblazers like her that set the table in the NWSL in particular. I also think, social media this is where social media has been huge. Like all of these athletes coming at the college levels took the megaphone and said, this is not acceptable. Like you saw what happened at the NCAA, with the locker rooms, everything like that. The more social media we can, it has pros and cons always, but to me, like that has actually been a huge equalizer for women's sports because you can show the discrepancies. In the UK, you see the teams there talking about like how, their flight commercial versus the moment that happened at the World Cup with the Spanish women's soccer team, like that televised around the world. And because, again, the players had like the direct access to journalists, direct access via social media, they can tell their stories in a real way. I think there was so many.
Also mentioned televised too, which I think is a really interesting thing. You mentioned the quote about how much of men's sports is televised versus women's sports. And so social media is actually taking back some of the airtime that women deserve on television that they're not getting on the media outlets that they are right now. What was the stat again that you shared about the percentage of airtime that men get versus women?
Yeah, so women are we've gone from 5 to 15% in the last like 4 years in media coverage. Like another interesting point around that is that actually more men consume women's sports than women. And they want to see more women's sports. The appetite is there. So there's like a disconnect between, broadcasters and like what the fans want. And I also think, another point on this is we're in an election cycle. And I don't want to get political now, but there's so much that feels like not right about where we are in progress as society as it relates to like, gender inclusivity. But if we take women's sports as just like a little shining light, like thankfully men are socializing at women's games now like they never did before. They feel like they can show up and participate and bring their sons and daughters and everything, else in a way that we just hadn't seen. And it's kind of, I was laughing even in my New York City apartment where I can hear my neighbors. Yesterday, there was screaming and shouting and I was like, what? And I was like, what sporting event? And they were watching the women's basketball, and I was
amazing.
Like, yes,
amazing.
Oh, it is amazing. So I think it's been a multitude of factors. I think it's like billionaires leading like a Michelle Kang in the team valuations. I think it's like leaning into like the fact that people especially coming out of pandemics, want more sports, want more entertainment, want more in real life experiences. Like, the demand for sports is higher than it's ever been. Social media megaphones that women athletes have rightly taken control back into their own hands and help people accountable. And then like just the general advocacy that we all can now kind of stand in and say like we want to see more for women. I think even more women are realizing like, hey, I should be showing up. Even if I'm not a sports fan, this is the right thing to do because it like moves the needle in so many directions positively forward for us.
It's remarkable to see, and it's palpable too when you watch that content on social media. We watch it on whatever your preferred sports channel is. It is you can tangibly feel the enthusiasm that's rising in folks. I just recently came across a video of a hockey game in Denver, WPHL game in Denver, where Denver doesn't have a women's team yet. Mm-hmm. And they were hosting, I want to say it was Minneapolis and maybe Boston, maybe.
Yeah,
and the crowd was going wild. It was sold out. And then they started demanding and chanting for their own team. Like, talk about power. Talk about the galvanizing of a community. You're just giving them the playground. They're deciding the games that they want to play and how they want to play those games, which is amazing.
Completely. And honestly, just, when Billie Jean and Alana took up the plight of women's hockey and we were in Deerfield, Illinois, in some of these stadiums, trying to have so many conversations, galvanize people, like what that took to deliver was just an insane amount of time, effort, like from so many people. Took 200 players standing out. And like, you go back to community, like they had to stand out with one voice That was the advice of Billie Jean and Alana, form a union, say we're not going to accept this anymore, advocacy. And they did it. And all of these, just the next generation coming. I mean, imagine girls and boys like skating together, playing hockey, and he can go and play in the NHL and make so much money. And I guess you can kind of play in the Olympics, and maybe you come back, and maybe, you can go on the ice at like 10 or 11 or whatever. No more. None of that. None of the BS that was like taking place.
It's my podcast. You can say it if you want.
Now you get to play in a league, and you get to have the respect, and people can buy your jerseys and have, the name on the back of it. Like, just, all of those kind of microaggressions that showed up previously, like, done away with. That's a rocket ship. It's thrilling.
I love it. I love it. And people are rising to the call too, which I find so interesting in so many communities and so many folks I've watched try to create a community. I think they're also visionaries. I think they also have identified a space that they can create and that folks could need and or find value in that space. But where I think communities oftentimes falter is you can have that vision, but folks don't know what to do when they get to that space, whatever that space is. It could be a physical space or it could be a digital space, however that might be. But as you reflect and think about the approaches that you're taking to turning the assembly of folks in that community into action, what are some guiding practices? What are some ways in which you help and enable folks to show up and be active within the community?
Yeah, I mean, this is where, I think about Madison Keys, right? She just won first Grand Slam in the Australian Open, and she talked about like the importance of therapy. And she also talked about like the Women's Tennis Association, who showed up for her significantly, and the Players Council, and like just being so much more than a governing body of sport, and that's like translates across like the PWHL or even the NWSL, which is has done such deep work under Jessica Berman's leadership to like negate all of the abuses and the toxic behaviors that existed in that sport, and take accountability for it, and like release their report done by Sally Yates publicly. Like, I think being super transparent, being like more than, people just talk about being more than an athlete, being more than a governing body, being more than a league, like showing up for your players as with a responsibility that, you care about them outside of, what they do on the ice or the court or anything like that. You see WNBA like opening up like, collective bargaining, making sure that we're thinking about like pregnancy, what that looks like, maternity benefits, like all of the holistic approach to how you support women in sports. And, Alison Felix and the Women's Sports Foundation has been at the forefront of that for many years, had a fund that if your sport, at whatever level can't cover your maternity, like they'll step in, so taking like, again, the grassroots efforts, the things that people know should be in existence, and seeing them now translate across the professional world of women's sports, it gives me a lot of joy and, a lot of hope. And I do think that that's, again, as we navigate so many things, you can take just a lot of like pride and joy from the great things that are continuing to happen in this space.
I couldn't agree more. And I think what's also beautiful about, so you're empowering a community that's there from I hate to say this word, but from a bureaucratic perspective, right? The people who set the tone and set the rules for how things are going to operate, you're challenging them to really start to level themselves up. While at the same time, these spaces in which the athletes are showing up and inviting their fans and spectators to show up too, it is that beacon of hope and joy when things feel like a bit rudderless, probably the understatement of the century, but it does feel a bit rudderless in so many other areas. As we're watching the rollback of DEI at the political level, we're seeing such a huge surge of momentum forward in being the change that folks deserve to see in women's sports, which is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking during Black History Month, and like the Professional Women's Hockey League are just in their first, year, 14th month, and they're out there and they're talking about like the significance of, Black athletes that blaze the trail across their sport and who are leading now, like Kim Davis at the NHL and others, so this is where we will continue to show up and not like back down. The Grammys last night, thankfully the entertainment sports, like we can go there and know that the work won't stop. And there's many corporations as well that are stepping up in this moment. You were there, you saw how Elf, Eyes, Lips, Face showed up for us, are showing up in women's sports in a super meaningful and thoughtful way, and have been like first out of the gate this year saying, absolutely, diversity, equity, inclusion has helped us deliver 22 executive quarters of growth. We're not backing down from anything. In fact, we're doubling down. So we'll go where we can be with people that are on our wavelength, much like yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing that I think we're at right now, and I love that you brought up the Grammys, because the arts and athletics, I think, are very closely intertwined as a representation of what is the omnipresent cultural norm and cultural standards. And when you look at through the political spectrum, it's just a very vocal and affluent minority of folks, but you can always look at sports and you can always look at the arts for what is coming, what's actually underneath the surface of all of the corruption or, dismay that you might see out there in this world. As you think about your hopes for the horizon, for the community that you're assembling, what are you hopeful for? What are you excited by? And what future are you really inspired to build towards?
I'm inspired by the momentum that's taking place. I want it to just continue. And, you were laughing about this because you're like, welcome everyone else. And listen, whatever about me saying that, I've said it to Billie. She's living her dream, but also there must be a part of her that's like, why did it take everyone else so long?
Yeah.
But welcome.
It's the curse of the visionary. There's one thing I know is that the visionary is going to be decades ahead of the rest of us, and the rest of us are going to be like, oh yeah, I get it now.
But I'm so here for it. Like, everyone is welcomed to continue to rise this tide. So I'm, the more and more we see offshoots of that, the happier our team will be. I'm excited about more women, understanding their purchasing power, I think, ever than before. And I'm excited about the great wealth transfer that's taking place. And there is going to be more money and generational wealth in the hands of women. And I think the more and more that we can bang the drum about the spaces and places that we want them to show up in, I do think that will help change things. I'm hopeful that it will. So we're fortunate by virtue of like the people that we get to be around, that we have a lot of those conversations. And, you see even like Melody Hobson of Ariel Investments, she is talking to some of the most high net worth individuals in the world, and now is the reason why the NWSL team is going to Denver. I mean, that is just, I would not have put those two together before. So these more uncommon pairings that we'll see, it just gives me so much hope for the future and more transparency as well. I think DEI reports were huge for corporate America. I'd love to see the similar in, just being very selfish. And people might say, well, women in science would love this as well. But I'm just going to talk about women in sports today.
But if you want to come back for another episode about women in science, you have an open invitation.
Thank you. I'll be a listener. But I'd love to see transparency around where sports sponsorship dollars are going. Because I do think that would be a huge thing if corporations would be like, okay, we saw they spent a lot of money in FIFA. How's that looking across the board for women's sports? I think we'd be able to push more people, more dollars into that landscape.
I mean, the accessibility of that is very, very close. I mean, you think about how many corporations' political donations and contributions were brought to light just a couple of months ago. How many folks are actually now being much more, to your point, being much more scrutable about where they're spending their money. We'll never forget the reel I just saw recently of Target, where consumers are bringing back the products that they just bought at Target because they've withdrawn their support of DEI efforts. So I think that last one it's coming. It's coming very soon, and I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And we kind of anecdotally know, but the more and more the accountability factor is there, I find it to be just intriguing. And, measuring it year on year, same way we did around board seats, same way we did around, gender diversity and leadership, etc. Let's go.
Let's go. Well, in the spirit of let's go, it's not often that folks get to listen to the managing director. I get to speak to the managing director of such a profound organization like Billie Jean King Enterprises. What do you need? You have an active listenership. You have folks who are here who support this brand. What do you need right now?
What an amazing question. Oh my goodness. Incredible. I want to just talk to more and more brands who want to show up authentically in women's sports. You could not be talking to a more connected and authentic team that has, you're talking to the GOAT, like Billie Jean King, if you're talking.
I can attest. Very connected, very in tune. One of the most intimidating conversations I've ever had, to be paired next to Sheila Johnson and Billie Jean King Enterprises. I think I blacked out. I think I don't know what I said. But yes,
you said great things, and yeah, they're always in the mode of like problem solving, of knowing where the dollars are going to have the most impact. So if you're interested, talk to us. You know, don't be tempted by like logo slaps or any of, not that anyone listening to your podcast would be. I'm actually, you know, aware of that, but you know,
they might be. It's okay.
There's a lot happening, and you know, we know what the real deal is. And I also want to, you know, reinforce to people that if you make charitable donations to efforts in women's sports, that's amazing, but that's not women's sports sponsorship. There's a difference. So let's talk about that too, and how you can really have impact with your brand and show up in a significantly meaningful way.
I love it. And if you're just a person who likes to geek out about brands, but you have no influence, or say, go to your local women's sports, whether they be at the collegiate level, whether it be at the professional level, get out there, support folks, because it's such a beautiful time and space to be in right now.
It seriously is. It seriously is. And you know what the most amazing point of it is, that when you see the young boys and girls with their signs about like, you know, this is my dream, these are my heroes, like that is just, because there is no one, I think, that is more impressive than a professional woman in sports. Like, you talk about all the barriers you have to knock down, all the roadblocks on any path to leadership. I think like multiply it by 5 for these women, like what they have seen, what they have gone through, like the reps they've put in, the, you know, the disrespect that they've faced in so many ways. And like, we should really be showing up for them. And look up the Women's Sports Foundation. This is an organization for 50 years that has paid for many incredible Paralympians, Olympians to like be at the games when there were no brands, there were no people showing up. So again, recognizing those that have helped set the table for what we're enjoying today.
Incredible. Well, if folks have taken this call to action to heart, they want to get in touch, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you so they can start making an impact with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can email me directly. It's great. It's Therese, THERESE at bjkglobal.com. BJK stands for Billie Jean King, and global because she has taken over the world. And
she has.
You're here for it because she does. She loves global everything. Always thinking global, or Billie Jean. Yeah, or LinkedIn, or listen, I'm on all the things.
All the things.
Many Therese O'Higginses.
There's not. And there's only one you. And you're very responsive and very on top of it with all the things that you're managing as well too. So genuinely take that request to email you seriously, because yeah, you'll respond very quickly.
I hope so. I hope so. I just want to say that, MK, you brought so much light and just joy to all of our attendees of the Power of Women's Sports, and just being there. And I'd listen, the reel that you did, everyone should check out that was, I actually, when we're still producing our recap video, but yeah. I sent it to them as inspiration. I was like, listen, if you can do as good a reel as this, I'll be happy.
Well, I'm here to help if you need some consulting on how to get that done fast. I can't say that it was done well, but it was done fast, and that's what matters most.
That is actually what matters most. We need to underscore this sometimes. Better to be done than perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, but your creativity is outstanding.
Well, thank you so much. I can't wait until our paths cross again. Hopefully at another really cool, badass event.
Yeah.
Where we're just empowering folks. Yeah, definitely.